So last year I was here at the conference and we were Ethical Metalsmiths. I'm the executive director of Ethical Metalsmiths, and we were about to launch an opportunity for jewelers to be able to source gold responsibly through artisanal mining channels. And large-scale hard rock mining is still the most toxic industry in the United States. Artisanal mining is one of the most toxic industries because of the amount of mercury that it releases into the environment annually. And corporate and governmental interests still haven't figured out how to work with communities closest to jewelry materials. And jewelry advertising makes every effort to create a false reality. I know it's not what you want to hear from me, but this part is exciting. Imagine that there could be jewelry designed to produce lasting benefits for the global community. This is something really different than lining your pockets. This is something that's really different than getting your design recognized. This is really about doing good with the material. So last year we were here, and I got to say that, well, we didn't know if we were going with fair trade or fair mind. Many of you here might know that. At this point, in fact, yesterday, we just completed our third transaction of 1 kilo of gold from a small-scale artisanal mine. These are some of the jewelers that are participating in the project. There are 26 total jewelers at this point in time that are working on the project. And at the rate of 3 kilos, that's about 96.9 troy ounces to date. And that becomes about $12,000 worth of premium paid to one particular mine. And the premium is being used to benefit the community, and according to the Fair Mine Standards, it has to be done in a democratic way. And the miners have decided that one of the things they want to do is they want to create a mechanism so that they can avoid transporting their ore 14 hours to the city of Lima, and instead they're going to have a plant at their facility that they can use. They're also creating jewelry shops within the community that will be run by people of the community making work with the gold that's there. So imagine a long-term benefit for the global community that's possible through jewelry. The Fair Mind and Fair Trade movement is doing an incredible job of addressing one of the biggest issues that we face, and that is the need to empower people closest to the source of jewelry's raw materials. As it stands right now, profits from gold increase the further you travel from the source. The closer you are, the poorer people are, the further away you are, the richer you are. Empowerment can alleviate poverty, it can encourage a level of unmatched environmental stewardship and community pride. When people are in charge, they do a really great job taking care. It's different than someone bossing them around and telling them what to do. I know that this is a beautiful alternative and it doesn't answer all of the challenges facing the jewelry industry, and we'll be hearing about that and other tools taking place during the panel discussion. But the Fair Mind and Fair Trade option gets us closer to a world where jewelry that is designed to is produced to provide lasting benefits for the global community. Other key aspects of the ethical jewelry movement are traceability and transparency. So in respect to those principles, I'll share some specifics of how we began sourcing Fair Mine gold from Arelsa. First of all, how does an organization like Ethical Metalsmiths make the decision to be pro-mining when 100% recycled often seems to be the most ethical alternative? For us, empowering people and communities closest to the source of our jewelry materials to be stewards of their own resources is an absolute requirement for an ethical jewelry movement. The Fair Mine and Fair Trade standards offer a way for consumers to have confidence in their materials. In 2011, a few of us that are kind of leaders driven to address these issues got together in Santa Fe. And at that time, we made a commitment. Toby Pomeroy was one of the people there. I was there. And we said, we're going to make sure that artisanally sourced, certified metals, responsibly mined, are going to be part of a broadly introduced alternative to the US market. It took a while, but we finally started to make some inroads, and through the Alliance for Responsible Mining, we finally got the ear and the audience that we were looking for, and this is what our meetings look like. So Rosa Reyes, she is basically one of the mine managers at Arelsa, where we're sourcing from. We're on a GoToMeeting site and trying to deal with the difficult web connections in other parts of the world, and we created a relationship. And that's what this whole thing is relationships. This is from this most recent November meeting that was organized by the Alliance for Responsible Mining in Peru. And the people here were jewelers from Canada, from Japan, from the Netherlands, from the United States, from all over, and miners from all over South America, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, etc., all gathered in one place with the same mission. We came at it for different reasons, but we were there for the same mission. Arelsa is a really small mining community, so these are one really specific examples, just to sort of whet your appetite for the topic. It's a really small mining community, 86 shareholders, 96 of those shareholders are women. The people that went to Relave, Peru, they weren't born there, they weren't raised there. The main president of the Arelsa mine, he's the gentleman on the left, he's a farmer. He had to flee the place where he was living in Peru in the 1980s and landed in Relave, Peru. And Relave is, the word in Spanish literally means sort of the dregs, kind of. It's the leftover material from mining, the tailings, and nothing grows there. There are no plants, there's no water, it never rains. No one would choose to live there in their right mind, but they're there making it work, and the only option they have available to them is mining. They got Fair Mine certification in 2012 and were ready to engage in direct trade. And we were the organization that enabled Arelsa Gold to reach the United States. Many of the mining organizations involved in fair trade and fair mine have cooperative business models with shared ownership, rotating leadership positions, and group decision making. In Bolivia, they even have the mantra, one for all and all for one. At Arelsa, it's a tunnel mine, and once you go in a little further, you can see the vein of material above your head, and they follow that vein in different directions. It's very small. They only blast twice a day. They crush the rock, treat it. It's a small operation. Myself and two other members of Ethical Metalsmiths went on the trip to Peru to visit the mine. It was very exciting. It isn't just outsiders that respect the fair mine model or the work of Arelsa. This mining engineer on the bottom, his name is Sebastian. He worked for large-scale mining companies, learned the ropes, and decided to apply his skills to communities that could really benefit from his knowledge. At this point, miners of Arelsa and others involved in the fair trade and fair mine systems, they're in the process because they really want to be, and they hold themselves to really high standards and are motivated by personal commitment, pride, merit-based financial incentives, and resourcefulness. They believe in their product and the story they have to share. These 4 women work for Arelsa. They are all daughters of miners that worked there, and they were able to get their education because of being involved in the process. They were sent off to school. They now work for the mine, and they are doing things like learning how to speak English and improving the business practices of the company. We were able to work with Hoover and Strong to not just offer 24-karat casting grain, which is what some of the other refiners wanted us to offer. We have 18 and 24-karat. We have sheet, wire, and grain available in those. And I'm really proud to announce that we're making a change in the business model so that if you're licensed, you can literally call up Hoover and Strong and order fair mine gold at any time. So hopefully we're going to make that work in the next several months. Gold comes in. We got some silver as well. We haven't processed it yet. We're just holding on to it. Weighed, tested, assayed, etc. The gold was so pure when it first came in, it literally got cut up in 3 pieces and then began the milling process to meet the orders of the different jewelers. And the story of Arelsa in Peru is being replicated by other small-scale mining communities across South America. These are some photos around Codmia, and Toby Pomeroy will have a chance to speak about that a little bit more later. This is an eco-gold mine in Colombia, South America. So if you're interested in what we do, let me know. I'm here Thank you very much for the opportunity to have this little interlude.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. So the subject of this panel today is on not only fair trade and fair mined gold, but also some of the challenges in the gold supply chain and what industry can do about them and also what consumers can do about them. I should also say how some of the challenges in the supply chain, how they're affecting the industry and how they're affecting gold in general. Let me introduce all the panelists. On the far end over there is Peter Harrell, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Counter-Threat Finance and Sanctions for the Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs of the United States Department of State, the State Department. In this role, he coordinates the State Department's economic sanctions and counter-threat finance efforts. Next to him is Melissa Joy Manning, who has been a jewelry designer since 1997, using recycled metals and locally sourced stones. She's also the chair of the Sustainability Committee for CFDA, which is the Council of the Fashion Designers of America. Next to her is Toby Pomeroy, who is an Oregon-based designer, goldsmith, and activist for social and environmental responsibility in the jewelry industry. He is also a member of the board of directors of ARM, which is the organization we just heard a little bit about, which seeks to empower small-scale miners and enhance the quality of life of artisanal miners. Next to him is Susan Posnock, who is the Director of Public Affairs and Education for Jewelers of America, and her department addresses responsible business practices in the jewelry supply chain, from mine to retail, as well as legislative and legal issues that impact the jewelry industry. And I should add, in the spirit of openness and transparency, that Susan's actually my wife. So she's easily the most brilliant panelist here today. So everyone listen to her, because I always do. Next to her is Cecilia Gardner, who is the president, CEO, and general counsel of Jewelers Vigilance Committee, a not-for-profit trade association dedicated to compliance with laws pertaining to the jewelry industry. She's also the general counsel to the World Diamond Council and a former federal prosecutor. And you just heard from Christina Miller, executive director and co-founder of Ethical Metalsmiths, which leads jewelers and consumers in becoming informed activists for responsible mining, sustainable economic development, and the use of verified ethical sources in jewelry making. Okay, so I guess the first question I have is, and I'll actually start with Susan, is, you know, there's so much interest in the diamond supply chain. You hear a lot about conflict diamonds, about the Kimberley process. There was the Blood Diamond movie. But are we seeing the same kind of interest in the gold supply chain? And are consumers aware of some of the issues that are out there as far as gold?
Thanks, Rob.
Did you practice?
Yeah, exactly.
No, we didn't. We're too busy taking care of our new baby. No, I mean, I think that it's not so much that they're more aware of the issues around gold or any other particular jewelry product and concerned about any particular jewelry product. I think it's overall consumers, especially younger consumers, are more aware and concerned about the provenance of the products that they buy in general, and that jewelry is just one product that is seeing this happen, where consumers are pushing for much more transparency and wanting the products that they buy to be sourced responsibly. I think that it's something that, as an industry, we have to stay ahead of the curve and be proud of the jewelry that we sell and feel good about selling gold jewelry, and not even wait for the consumer to actually be coming into stores and asking these types of questions, to be ahead of the curve and to feel good about the product that we sell, because it is something that's supposed to symbolize love and commitment and things like that. But overall, I wouldn't say that gold has gotten more attention than, say, diamonds, just from what I've seen, from what I've heard from Jewelers of America members. There doesn't seem to be a huge number of people coming in and asking about these things. It's possible that they're not going to those jewelers. They might be going to other jewelers. They might be seeking out folks who are doing fair mine and fair trade and things like that, for example. we're encouraging our members to communicate with their suppliers, to look for good sources, to get involved with programs like Fair Trade and Fair Mine, if it's possible and works for their business model. But overall, I would just say that it's part of a consumer trend for more transparency and knowing where your products come from.
Okay. Any of the other, I write a little bit about sustainable and some of these social issues, and every now and then I get consumers approach me and they ask me what should I do, and some of these questions are actually quite difficult because a lot of these products are very much in their infancy. But I was wondering, some of the people who are involved in this movement, do you guys get a lot of inquiries from consumers, and are you noticing a greater consumer awareness of some of these issues?
I would say that we don't get a lot of them. It's not the preponderance, the main question that we do get. But at the same time, my experience is that, like you suggest, people are interested. And I think anyone who's paying attention, that if we're paying attention to what's happening, we all know somewhere in our being that if we don't shift over to sustainable practices, this whole human experience, the experiment, is who knows how that's going to turn out. So I think everybody knows that we have to become sustainable, and that while it's not a lot of attention, there's not a lot of attention on it. I feel like as a designer and one who stands for a quality of life, not just now, but for future generations, it really is essential. I can't imagine not being proactive in that area, because when we do offer it, when we tell the story to our customers, almost every time, people will go for the more expensive, slightly more expensive fair mined gold that we're offering, because they love the story and it's really consistent with what they're about.
Okay. So let me ask Peter, when you look at the gold supply chain of someone who has kind of a global view and a global perspective, what do you see as the big issues as far as gold supply, especially from a political standpoint?
Well, thank you very much. And I actually wanted to add one comment on the first question you asked. So what Rob didn't mention is that in addition to the responsibilities I have that he talked about, I'm also responsible for the State Department, for the Kimberley process, and for conflict minerals writ large, including Dodd-Frank, including issues like conflict-free gold, those kinds of issues. So it's something I actually see across a number of different industries, is this shift towards greater awareness from consumers, particularly younger consumers, in understanding where these products come from. You hear about it from the electronics industry, cell phone makers like Apple, some of the big companies. They're hearing from some of their younger consumers about, are there conflict minerals in your cell phones? We're clearly hearing about it from some consumers and the jewelry industry in both precious stones and I think increasingly in the gold. I might get it more personally in the gold industry because my wife is an environmental background and was quite concerned when we got married about 8 years ago that she give me an ethically sourced wedding band. And 8 years ago it was not that easy for her. I mean, she had to find a small jeweler up in Vermont who was able to cast a wedding band. And now it's obviously, thanks to Ethical Metalsmiths and things like that, getting easier and easier for that. But I think that we are seeing growing consumer demand from it. I mean, I think from a government perspective, we really see two different areas of concern, for the gold. I shouldn't say concern, both concern and hope. On the hope front, we certainly around the world think that ethical small-scale artisanal mining, whether it's in Latin America or whether it's in parts of Africa, can be a very important driver of economic development in rural communities, particularly for small entrepreneurs. But the area where it's of concern is that obviously also gold and other small-scale mining can contribute to conflict in parts of the world. That's one of the things we've seen in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Great Lakes region. We've seen the ways in which armed groups manage to tax certain elements of the mineral supply chain in order to fuel conflict. And we do, being very candid, assess that at the current time, the gold trade is the single biggest source of revenue for armed groups in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There are a couple of minerals there that have historically provided revenue for some of the armed groups. A couple of the other minerals at this point seem to be coming out of control of the armed groups, but they're moving into the gold trade in a fairly heavy way, and we do assess it's a major issue there. One I've been talking to smelters around the world about, as well as the jewelry industry. So I think there's a lot of hope from ethical small-scale mining, but we also see a lot of concern about the way, again, particularly in the Great Lakes region in Africa, the gold trade can be used to fund conflict there.
Yes, sir.
In addition to the ethical concerns that have been raised here, the sustainability issues that have been raised here, the funding of conflict using these natural resources that we've been referring to, there is, of course, special concerns regarding government regulations that have been engendered by these concerns, so that, even if the consumer doesn't care, turns out foreign policy and government lawmakers do care. And here in the United States, for example, we have had two major legislative requirements pertaining to the fundamental products of which our industry products are made, one diamond and the other gold, along with tungsten, which I think is another metal that's used in jewelry. So from my perspective, and I'll get more into the details about these legislative requirements in the next panel when I'm going to explain Dodd-Frank to you. I would say that the special concerns are not just it's not just consumer driven, to the extent that it is, because I would agree that consumers are not necessarily front and center on these issues. It's not just driven by people like our presenter earlier, who talked about simply wanting to create the benefits for the communities that are lucky enough to have these natural resources at their disposal, but it's because the government is focused on these issues, focused on the fact that they're funding conflict around the world, and wants the industry to step up to the plate in terms of controlling this supply chain. So we're getting these legislative requirements with which we have to grapple as business people.
Right, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Dodd-Frank in the session coming up. Just as a quick summary, it requires public companies, and there's a couple in the jewelry industry, to say whether their products, I'm simplifying a bit, but say whether their products contain conflict gold or what they're doing to avoid conflict gold. It's similar, something like that. Peter, is that fair or no? It's a little too simplified, or?
Publicly traded companies, so big companies that issue stocks and bonds in the U.S., have to report, starting next month, is when the first reports are due, on whether or not their products contain tin, tungsten, tantalum, or gold that have been funding conflict in the Great Lakes region of Africa. And so you've seen a major effort by a couple of industries, particularly by the jewelry industry, to understand where their minerals are coming from, particularly for jewelry industry, where gold is coming from, to make sure that they don't have conflict gold. One of the things we've been working on from a State Department perspective is we have a very keen interest in this legislation not simply driving the market out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Because again, we actually think it is important that mining can contribute to development, to economic growth in conflict-afflicted regions. And we want to see the jewelry industry and other industries able to source gold from the Great Lakes region, but they need to do so in a conflict-free manner, which has not been the easiest thing for industry, but which we and Cecilia and industry and others have been working collaboratively to make sure there are conflict-free supply chains that include products sourced in the Great Lakes region of Africa.
Okay. I think we just barely touched upon environmental issues, which are also a big issue in gold, especially since it uses cyanide, which a lot of people think has a negative impact. When you talk about fair mind and fair trade gold, is it possible to kind of get around that, or is that always going to, is the environmental issues always going to be an issue in something like this?
So, I'm not really clear about your question.
No, I'm saying because if you're offering any kind of gold, isn't there always kind of an environmental impact? So how does the fair trade and fair mind model, how does it get around that environmental impact?
Okay, good, yeah. There always will be an environmental impact, for sure. And I think what ARM has been able to develop, the Alliance for Responsible Mining, is really focused on empowerment. Because while there are environmental impacts associated with it, when miners, small-scale artisanal miners, which there are, say, roughly 10 million ASM or artisanal small-scale miners associated with gold that are mining around the world, and about 100 million people are directly affected by their mining, that most of them are illegal, most of them operate unrecognized and disorganized. So they're working around the law and around the large-scale mining operations, and their environmental impact is huge. And what organizing allows them to do is start to be responsible for what they haven't been able to organize for. They haven't been recognized as an entity. And when they can organize for that, their efficiencies go way up. It's set up in both the fair trade and fair mine structures that they will receive a premium for mining responsibly. And it starts to reverse that downward spiral of poverty. It's virtually poverty that has the really nasty environmental consequences happening. There is earth removal. There's consequently, there will be some tailings to deal with, but they also, through the education process, can be very aware of how to do that responsibly in such a way that they can be certified and receive that premium. Christina, do you want to add to that?
Well, I would just agree. I mean, that you can't avoid all environmental issues. However, for instance, like at the mine, Arelsa, where we're sourcing from, it's a really arid climate. It's a slow process. The scale helps to alleviate some of the dramatic environmental effects that have to happen alongside industrial scale mining, because the rapid rate just causes that effect. So the fact that artisanal mining is done on a slower scale, not as much mechanization, in an arid climate, you don't have exposure to water, so you don't have acid mine drainage in the same kind of way. So there are some benefits, but absolutely.
Can I, people from industry, the two ladies here, is the conventional, the kind of traditional industry doing anything or looking into some of the environmental impacts of things like gold mining?
I mean, I would say definitely, but it's, I mean, as far as like for Jewelers of America members, the majority of those are retailers, so we're not directly involved with the mining, but just as an example, we're involved with IRMA, the Initiative for Responsible, it's the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. Yes, thank you. So we've been involved with that probably for more than, definitely more than 5 years, at least as long as I've been at Jewelers of America. And it's looking to develop standards with regard to sourcing. And then even more obviously is the Responsible Jewelry Council, excuse me, which has a chain of custody for precious metals, was co-founded by the former chairman and president of Jewelers of America, Matt Runcie. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. RJC has done a lot of work with regard to development of standards. Actually, the standards were recently updated in the last, just this past year. And that includes environmental standards are a key component of the RJC. And I think they have close to 500 members now. And throughout the supply chain from mine to retail. And that's another huge effort with regard to the environment, but also it goes into social and human rights issues as well.
Okay, Christina, you talked a lot about fair mined gold, and I think to most people that's a new label. Can you kind of explain? And I know it kind of emerged from fair trade, or it used to have a relationship with fair trade. Can you kind of explain the difference between fair trade and fair mined, and why you have that particular label?
Yeah, so they're really not that different. It was a joint project. Fair Trade, Fair Mind was one thing, and last April they formalized the contract. The 3-year contract between the two groups ended, and they decided to go separate ways and kind of advance the models in their own unique ways. But they're not that dissimilar. We're still waiting for everything to shake out to see how the two will end up continuing to support each other and how the two will be in competition. We went with Fair Mind for a variety of reasons. We had a really great personal relationship with the Alliance for Responsible Mining. It is about relationships, and that's the group that we received the most kind of positive, let's do this, let's make it happen. We had gotten a lot of challenges from Fair Trade because there wasn't a mechanism for licensing jewelers in the United States. There won't be for about another year, but it is coming. Some of the key differences are the premiums are different. We really support the premiums that the Alliance for Responsible Mining is putting out there. It's a higher premium. It really aims to benefit bringing new mining communities into the system. And based on the fact that jewelers keep signing up with us, it is not a deterrent. People really want to participate in it. When it gets down to the specifics, there are now, when you become a licensee, Fair Trade or Fair Mind, they are a little bit different. Each system has about 3 different models that can be signed up for. Both of them have entry-level traceability. As it goes up the scale, larger scale businesses can enter the process because it allows for bigger businesses to mix the gold coming from those mines in with their product. And then there are just different rules on how you label it and so on. But in general, they're not that dissimilar. Fair Mind is becoming more prevalent here at this time because it is the mechanism that has allowed jewelers to enter the process. Fair Trade, on the other hand, is much more prevalent in Europe. So
talking about the premiums, because that's when I spoke to people about this was something that came up a lot. I heard that obviously some consumers want this, but one of the things that kind of came up a lot is that you have fair trade coffee. It's not, if you have a premium cup of coffee, it's not the biggest deal in the world. If you have a fair trade premium bananas, it's, you know, it's like $1, $2 or something. But on gold, it could be substantial. Have you found any resistance to this, and how do you kind of get past that? Toby or...
I think there's always that bit of resistance when we're asked to pay more for something. But when people understand that we really are developing communities, we are empowering a huge segment of the population that the jewelry industry, for the most part, has ignored. I mean, we have not acknowledged or celebrated where our materials come from and what they go through. They live very impoverished lives. They do very dangerous work. They have no backup. There is no retirement or health care for these people. Many of them are, in artisanal small-scale mining, certainly, they are often itinerant, and they'll work farms when the weather's right or mine when the weather's not. So when people become aware that there's an opportunity to support a component of our world, an element of our society that we really are dependent on and we've been ignoring for a long time, I think most people are happy to pay that premium. And what we're finding is that some of the jewelers that are both fair trade certified and fair mine certified are paying the higher premium that fair mine suggests because they know that it takes a lot to get a mine certified, to have a mine reach their certification, the development that they need to go through to be certified. So it's a huge commitment on their part, and we want to make sure that those people can continue to mine responsibly, their communities can work, their water systems work, their education and healthcare works, and inspires other miners. If we don't inspire other miners to join this system, we will continue to encounter the same degradation or worse. Massive amounts of the rainforest are being leveled every year just from wildcat illegal mining there. So I think it works. The premium really does work.
Right. And when you go to the mines, do the people understand the concept? Do the miners understand? Do you have to explain it to them? Like, what kind of reaction do you get from the people on the ground?
And I've visited now 4 of the artisanal small-scale mines in South America, and they so love it. I just got back a couple of weeks ago from La Llanada, about 7,500 feet elevation up in the Andes, southwest Colombia. The cooperative is the Kudmia Cooperative, and we've been buying gold from them for about 6 months ago. We ordered our first gold. But I went to visit them, and they are so... I had a meeting with 13 of the board members of the cooperative, and we sat around the outside of this room, and I had my interpreter. They wanted to know why I wanted to buy their gold, why I was there. And I told them that I was excited to share their story, excited to let the world know that they are heroes. They are, I don't want to go on too long, but this community is in the Nariño district of southwest Colombia, and it's the most, it's a coca growth center, marijuana, there's FARC and all kinds of paramilitary activities that murder, extortion, kidnappings are commonplace, and I was advised against going there, shouldn't go there, but knowing Alliance for Responsible Mining and the mining community said, come, we'll take care of you, we know it's safe, and they have organized their community so the FARC doesn't come in there anymore, and they are proud, they are simple, but they live a really rich, family-oriented life. And when I told them I wanted to tell their story here, I was going to let the world know of the leaders that they are, the passion that they bring to something that people have said responsible mining is an oxymoron, that they are showing the world that it can be done right. And this one gentleman stood up and he was clearly moved. And he said, this is what we have always wanted. We believed that up until maybe 3 years ago that we would never see Westerners here. And we are so proud. We are proud, and we want the world to know that we're proud of what we do. And then he said, let's have coffee and be friends. And it was one of those moments that I don't know, there's been few moments that precious. So that we are really making a difference in these communities, and they know about ethical metalsmiths. So buying that gold really does make a difference, and other miners are hearing about it. Right now, 25 mining communities are in line for being certified fair mined.
Melissa, I want to bring you into this. Can you talk a little bit about being the Sustainability Committee for CFDA, what that involves and what kind of things you work on, and how that especially applies to gold?
Sure. I can't really speak to the fair trade, fair mind issue. Apologies for that, but we do use 100% recycled metal, and we're a certified green company. So for me, I think to your point about inspiration, Toby, I think it's really important to inspire consumers to ask the right questions. So for us, most people don't realize that gold, in conjunction within the fashion industry, all groups together, is the world's second largest gross polluter, second only to big oil. And I think we have a really big problem if people don't realize that. So part of our agenda with the CFDA is to educate consumers to ask the right questions. So then as designers, we can make the right product. I think it's what Christina is doing with the fair trade, fair mined gold is great because we need to offer more options for designers to create sustainable items. And it's up to us as luxury designers to start that trend. So I think we already have a customer who pays premium for a label. Why can't they pay premium for a belief? And we find that to be true with our customers who come in and engage with our brand. So when we inform and tell the story about what it means to be sustainable as a brand and why it's important to us and to us as a community at large, we see the conversion rates only amplify because they're able to buy into something they believe. So I do think it's really important. The CFDA is right now trying to educate our members so that we can all create better product.
And when you say you want to educate consumers, is there anything in particular that you're trying to get them to do, or you're trying to push them in a certain direction, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think authenticity, we'll be talking about that a little bit tomorrow in terms of marketing with millennials, but I think authenticity is really important, and we're just seeing a trend, I know I am, in that people want to believe in what they're doing. I think for a while we all just wanted to be successful, but now with transparency and culture, we have to take responsibility for what our success means to other people. And it's just to create a product in which you believe, and then be able to sell a product in which you believe, and a customer can buy that. It's an important process. And when we're making something out of gold, and we talked about heirlooms on the last panel, you want to make something that brings good to your community. We make everything on shore. We support our community, and we want customers to want to support their belief systems. And you can do that through economics.
Okay. So as far as the industry goes, what kind of things do you think the industry should be doing to improve the state of its supply chain? Any thoughts, or Cecilia? Or?
Sure. Well, there are certain things that certain players in the industry have to do because the law requires them to do it. And again, that'll be the next panel. But I do think that these government requirements, in certain cases, also create a sort of general good practice template for companies, even if you're not in the supply chain of a publicly traded company that's going to have to file a report, according to Dodd-Frank, that the entire issue of maintaining control of your supply chain in order to know where it's all coming from and how it got to you is a thought process, is a motivation, is a core value that seems to be rising in terms of the industry here in the United States, at least, and certainly I know in Europe. So maybe there are some government regulations that force you to think about these things, and certainly if you want to stay in the supply chain of a publicly traded company, you have to think about these things. But I think for me, for the Jewelers Vigilance Committee, which is the organization that I head, these create a sort of atmosphere of good trade practices. And obviously we want you to comply with the law, and the government wants you to comply with the law, but it's clear that this is creating an atmosphere in which things can do better. And Rob, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
To who? Not to me. Right.
Well, to Christine,
okay,
and to
okay.
Toby perhaps, and Melissa as well. So in the realm of gemstones, especially sometimes diamonds, well, especially diamonds, we are getting, the people who are involved in the mechanisms that control the supply chain for these gemstones very often gets pushback from the locations and the countries in which these products are sourced. And here's what the pushback sounds like. You white people need to get out of my backyard. These are my natural resources. You don't come in here and tell me how to handle them. You neo-colonialist, you. We're perfectly capable of managing our natural resources. Thank you very much. Do you get that in the gold industry too?
I'm sure we do, but I think one advantage that ARM has is that ARM is an NGO founded in and based in Medellin, Colombia, and they are made up of people who are just passionate for miners. So I think it's their people talking to. They're really taking care of their community. And I think because of that, there's been a high level of acceptance that is would be perceived a lot differently if someone were coming in from outside. So that's the quick answer to that.
I also know that in South America, the mines that are available to source from, Sotrami, Orelsa, and others, they've had 10 years of support from international governments to bring them up to the level that they are now. And The other thing that they have in South America are these producer support organizations, which kind of stand between ARM and the miners. And these are people that are of the same descent, can communicate on the same level, often come from mining backgrounds, and have somehow turned their knowledge into applicable advice to provide the miners. And I know that some of the pilot projects in Africa, they're having the exact challenge that you're describing, even on the small scale artisanal level, where they thought they would be able to do it one way, and they go in and try to pilot the project, and they're getting that same kind of pushback. And so it's going to take a while for those sort of intermediary folks, the ones that can meet the miners on the level that they are of the same culture, share the values, they can break bread together, but there's an educational level and a business sense that is fresh, that can, sort of make the change occur, but nobody likes to be told what to do. Yeah.
By the way, anyone can ask, if anyone wants to ask a question, doesn't just have to be the panelists asking questions. Anybody is okay. Oh, do we have them? Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Right now.
We might have different numbers.
Okay. Presently, the premium that is paid to certified mines is $4,000 a kilogram. And I think a current kilogram is something close to $50,000. So it's less than 10%. And that is designed to support the small-scale miners, which average really around 3.5 kilos a month that they can produce. So given that they're small scale, that premium is required to be able to meet all the development standards and also build a community. Now, how that translates down through to the customer, it ends up being pretty small. That premium divided out into the gold, even marking that up so you're still making a markup on your investment there, it's not really significant, maybe $100 to $200 on a ring. So it's something, but in most people, when they hear the story, it's like not a problem.
So we have a question back there?
I think at this point, if you aren't using 100% recycled as your baseline starting point as a small-scale jeweler, because it's very accessible, there are suppliers, there are refiners that are offering 100% recycled, that's the place to start. If that's not where you are, then you're behind if you want to be part of this movement. Supporting the Artisanal Mining Initiative is new. It's significant because we've been recycling precious metals forever. We've just figured out a way to tell people the story about how precious metals are used and adapted so that we can turn it into things. So on one hand, we have to be really honest with ourselves that it would be a lie to say that we haven't been recycling metals forever, right? So it's just a new way to talk about it. So then the next thing is how can we do even better? How can we really achieve long-term social good through jewelry? And the best option we have now to do that is supporting these small-scale initiatives and getting behind like the large-scale traceability that the big guys have to deal with. It's really important that the vision is applied from teeny tiny to the biggest possible scale.
I think that's the ethical mining is great, but I don't think it's the only way. I think you can buy we have been recycling gold, and we will continue to recycle gold, but there are certified green companies who recycle gold who have great environmental and social measures and who do it in the United States. So for me, I think sustainability is twofold. It's social and environmental, and we're talking about the environmental impact of gold and the social gold. in the developing nation. We have a job problem in the US, and I think that buying from United States-based companies and manufacturing in the US also contributes to improving social strata. And when you're buying from a certified green refiner based in the United States, I think you're also doing an immense amount of good for your community.
Rob, can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
You know, I'm going to bring a note of caution here, just because I'm a lawyer and it's my job. You know, these claims about green and fair trade and fair mind are like any other advertising claim. They have to be substantiated. In other words, if you're making a claim about the source or the quality or the manner in which your product's been brought to market, you have to be able to substantiate it. The Federal Trade Commission is concerned enough about claims of green and environmentally safe and fair trade, fair mind products that they recently issued a set of guidelines for making those claims, and those are the guidelines they will use to determine whether or not your claim is deceptive. So in a note of caution, because that's what I'm here to do, I would say it's very important for you to look at those standards, and before you rush to say, I'm using recycled gold and therefore my product is green, or I'm a recycler, and because I recycle gold, I am a green company, that you better be sure that you can substantiate that claim. You know, obviously gold is one of the most aggressively recycled products on the face of the earth. You know, once you pull the gold up out of the ground, you don't put it back, and it doesn't waste, and it retains its value, and it's always reclaimable no matter what you're doing to it. And as you know, gold purifiers and gold refiners take unbelievable steps to recapture the gold that gets thrown out in the recycling process. So given what a recycler does and how they do it, the ability for a recycler to claim green, and therefore for you as manufacturers to use that gold and then claim that your gold is green, is a claim that before you make it, you'd better be sure you can substantiate it.
Well, would the
May I say something?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I think that's a really good point, and it's something in the CFDA we've been talking about a lot, is the certification process, because there are so many companies coming out of the woodwork offering to certify you, and it's turned into a niche business where you're not really sure. So the governmental guidelines that are coming out are the best, but there are state certifications, so that's what we went for, that's what our refiner went for, and so it comes down from the US government. So I think if you are interested in making sure that you have transparency behind your product, to really look at the company that even certified, the company with who you look for, and what they're looking for, because all of them have different expectations now, and there's a lot of confusion in the industry, and some of the certifiers are asking a boatload of money. So it's turned into an industry, well, if you pay me $10,000, I'll certify you. So I really think that that's a very good point and something for all of us to pay attention to.
And the FTC document is basically called the Green Guides. So if you Google FTC/Green Guides, you will find the standards that apply. I just want to also mention that with recycled gold, you know, of course it is recycled, and maybe it's the third, fourth turnaround of recyclable material, which means that it was pulled up out of the ground at some point. And how was it pulled up out of the ground? And what happened to the ground that it was pulled up out of? And if you're just using recycled gold, can you feel really good about what you're doing? Because after all, I mean, did some of that gold come from the DRC 25 years ago? Or, you know, I mean, the gold supply chain is incredibly complex and fraught with difficulties in terms of some of these claims that are being made. I only raise this as issues for you to all think about and address. There aren't solutions that are very easily accessible in this area.
This gentleman? From where?
This is a universal issue, not only a gold issue,
Mm-hmm. that could mean a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what industry did you? The green building.
It's volunteer, they just make up a better standard, but they stand behind it.
Yeah.
They have architects and engineers to put their stamps on it.
The idea of pulling this all together in the trade is something that I think about a lot.
Well, believe building rating system, that's what my model is.
Okay. All right.
Rob, I just want to add that oh, no, okay.
Yeah.
Came out with this whole marketing concept. I mean, she just laid on us like 2 years of going to school to learn about this stuff. What is your marketing plan? I understand your sourcing and the credibility and everything. You have a marketing plan to sell it.
Just simply, Harvey, right? The marketing plan is, no, we don't have a marketing plan. And this is really a grassroots commitment that I think has been latent, but it's just waiting to explode. And the results of the conversation that are happening here, that when one person takes a step for what's possible, one person starts to let go of some aspect of their business or their life that hasn't worked well and moves into a sustainable field and shares that with others, it will inspire others. They will take new actions. I see it as something, this conference is evidence of that, and the number of people that are talking about this at the trade shows and the amount of industry press we're getting on responsibly sourced minerals is huge. It's exponential. ARM is being flooded, the Alliance for Responsible Mining, flooded by requests for how can we get this. So it is grassroots, it's organic, and there is no plan, and it is happening. And I'm just standing for this industry shall be a sustainable industry. We have the ability, we have the will, and there's nothing to stop us from having it be sustainable and really a model in that.
Yeah, Susan, you wanted to say something?
I mean, I think I would like to just add that this is something that prior to Dodd-Frank, well before Dodd-Frank, RJC was developed before Dodd-Frank, there was work being done in this area, and it's not that the industry suddenly had Dodd-Frank and suddenly felt like it had to do something to address these issues. I feel like the industry has been proactive with regard to addressing issues, but also just to comment on having a system where it's all taken care of in one sort of comprehensive system that deals with everything. I don't think, I've only been in the industry for about maybe 7 years. I can never imagine that ever happening in this industry. I think that it's far too complex. I think that what is happening is that people are finding solutions to these issues and these challenges, and certainly there's a lot of collaborative work being done as well, but not every solution is going to fit every individual or every company within the industry. And I think the good news is that there's a lot of good work being done on different levels, and so there might not be some perfect solution that's going to work for everyone, but there's great examples of different solutions like RJC, like Fair Mine, Fair Trade, that are working for different companies and good for consumers and good for business.
Susan, I don't ever like to disagree with you because I have so much respect for the work that you do. But I think big, maybe too big sometimes, and I have to think that if there were big solutions to this problem, if there was big thinking thrown at, issues pertaining to the supply chain of our products and how they come to market, that an overall framework can be developed and that the problem could be addressed to the benefit of all. It's complicated, I know that, it's a big thing, but I would really love to see the industry come together to address that.
Okay, let's make it happen.
Big issue, but I think it could happen. I've been thinking about this a lot over the past year or so, and I have some ideas, but it will take big thinking.
And it's not for lack of trying.
And it's not for lack of trying.
I'd like to actually chime in here, if I may, because the first time that Toby spoke in one of our conferences was in 2008, and that's actually when we started, before there was a gold conference, precious substance conference series. It was the first time that we started addressing, I had saved it for the 10th anniversary of a particular series, and that was the first time that we had addressed it. Every year we've taken it on more and more.
Sir, if you have a quick question, you can, and then we'll, I'll get to Mark first, and then you. Yeah, Mark. Yeah.
It's probably more of a soapbox than a question.
You? Really? Boy, Dan would be really interested in that.
2 points. To Cecilia's point, to the point of where's the marketing plan and where's the consumer. What the industry has to address is what's going to do that is transparency. Transparency is going to have to be social, it's going to have to be ecological, and it's going to have to be conflict minimum. These issues individually aren't going to build the type of consensus where a retailer wants to say this is ethical and this is not in a small way. There has to be a much broader sense of the industry of transparency, responsibility, and those words kind of go hand in hand. That when you live in a glass house, then we can all tell the consumer, compare us all. But piece by piece, this is a very tough marketing proposition, for anybody. And I think I can spin just about anything in this stuff.
It's tough, but I just have to believe that, maybe it's from my perspective because I deal so much in precious stones, and now I've been dealing so much with gold and tungsten supply chain issues, and I see a perspective from every sector of the industry. I just think that there's a way to address this big picture that will help sustain the industry and meet the goals of these various initiatives, all of which have my respect and support, as you know, because I work with all of them, but there has to be a level up, a level that goes above this, that we can address on a sort of macro level. I just believe that it's doable. I just do.
Okay. So you have a quick, oh yeah.
I think also somebody mentioned responsible jewelry counsel. Yes, I'm on the board, so this is a paid public announcement.
No. I believe strongly in what they're doing. It's just that
Custody is the next step up.
maybe.
Chain of custody. It means knowing where everything is from.
That's different than chain of custody. That's different. Big thinking.
Now I'm okay.
Typical.
Oh my God, I'm scared of this question already.
You're in a discretionary business. In other words, you're not selling a commodity. You're not selling gold right now. You're selling gold in fashion. And the customer can do it out. Just like in fashion, just like in pocketbooks and bags and everything else. So that's the key to the whole thing. The reason green buildings sell is because they're the most beautiful buildings. People fall in love with them.
That's a great point, because we have to get the demand in order to change the supply. And that's one of our biggest challenges. What we're doing, first and foremost, is trying to educate our members so that they make decisions so we first and foremost can have a sustainable product. There has been talk about going into PSAs, to inform the community at large of, how you can create proactive change within the environment or your own community by how you choose to spend your money, i.e. buying a sustainable product. But if we don't have something to offer, it's a challenge to put out the ask. So I think one of the greatest frustrations for me right now as a designer, and for many other designers who want to be sustainable, is part of this conversation is, what are our choices? We don't have a lot of choices right now, and our choices are very limited. So we collectively have to start asking the right questions so we can get a supply chain going where we can buy responsibly sourced minerals or even fabrics that you're talking about, who, there's so many arguments even within the fabric industry, and the Higg Index that hopefully will come out in like 3 years. And if no one knows what the Higg Index is, that's a larger conversation, but I think you might want to look it up. There will be more transparency, and so the CFDA is really trying to lay the groundwork right now in partnership with the Danish Fashion Council. There's a lot of back-end work going on in order to create proactive cumulative change for our membership and for the community at large.
Okay, we have to wrap this up. So anyone have some final thoughts on where we can take this and what the industry can do and what people out there who are consumers, what they should be looking for and they should be thinking about when they buy gold? Or
Ask. Everyone in every stage of it, whether you're buying something to own it and wear it, whether you're buying something to make something out of, whether you're involved on the larger capacity, ask. It needs to be a conversation that we're all having all the time.
And I think also acknowledging that small changes are okay. It's not possible for anyone to be 100% green or really challenging. So whatever you can do, within your own business collectively makes a lot of change. So, reward yourself for what you can do, and as that becomes sustainable within your business, add other things.
Yeah.
And Peter, when you meet with the industry, what kind of thoughts, what kind of positive things do you see happening, and what kind of things would you like to see perhaps accelerated?
I think what we're seeing is ask, and that's what we're asking, we from a governmental perspective are asking companies to do. I think we're seeing, we really are seeing, whether it's in diamonds, colored stones, gold now, we really are seeing greater interest out of the industry, some of it driven by consumers, some of it driven by regulations, to understand where the materials are sourced. And I think that there are a variety of different fundamentally industry-led initiatives out there to track where those are from, and we're just encouraging companies to ask those questions about where is this coming from and run it down the supply chain. And so I think we're actually seeing quite a bit of progress from the industry, across these different, whether it's stones or gold.
Okay, so thank you so much. I really appreciate the panel. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you, though.
Nice to see you too.
And I'm impressed with your optimism
Yes.
about the full solution.
That's okay, I knew that. Okay. I like, yeah. You too? That's no problem.
Okay, everybody, it looks like we're having